What up, everybody? It's your boy Pyro, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about some albums that I've listened to since the beginning of the year. And these aren't new albums by any means. In fact, far, far from it. I have decided that I wanted to understand the punk movement and music a bit more. And so I'm starting at the very beginning. I looked into proto-punk albums and some art rock albums from the 60s, and that oftentimes punk artists have cited as influences. And the first album that I listened to was the Red Crayola. God bless the Red Crayola and all who sail with it. And this was a wonky, funky, mind-boggling LP at points. This was like, honestly, not a. I think this was, first off, let me say, I think it was very. It was ahead of its time, very ahead of its time. There's a lot of experimentation here, and the sound is actually not all that bad production-wise. We have some organ, your bass, guitar, vocals. I almost feel like half of this album, the vocals are just kind of randomly thrown in there. The music is doing wonky things regardless. It's very experimental. This wasn't my favorite thing that I've heard, but it really wasn't as bad as I expected coming into the 60s. Because this is not an era that I've been really excited about. I grew up listening to 70s and 80s music, and I was kind of, I dipped into the 60s a little bit, but I was always more into the 50s rather than 60s, like listening to Sinatra and jazz, that kind of stuff. But not typically the rock music that came from the 60s. I don't know why. I've never been able to get into the sound. I think there's a lot of organ that's used as well. The production's always a little rough. It's not that I don't respect it. It's just not something I typically enjoy. So overall, this album was going to get a 5.5 for me. I'm just, again, this is not my style. I'm not really into experimental rock to start with, but this was cool to hear some of this stuff, and you could see how some of the funkier stuff in punk kind of came around. So that was really, really cool for me to kind of witness. But yeah, I'm going to go with a 5.5. I know it's a legendary album, but I am giving you what I'm feeling as I'm listening to it. It's not always perfect, but that's just what it is. Now, the next LP that I listened to was Black Monk Time. This is not Black Monk Time, but this is the image that I'm using. And this I was actually pleasantly surprised with. This honestly was not all that bad, dare I say. It was very experimental. It was funky. I absolutely loved the vocals in this. The drums were really interesting in it, and yeah, I think this one's like a 7 point. Yeah, I'll just go with a flat 7 here. And like, I really enjoyed this for the 60s. I was shocked. Like this, I could really see some like punk influences here because of like the tempo and just the wild vocals. Like there was some cool stuff in here. And while maybe on the first listen, I was a little like, I'm not so sure about this. The next listen, it actually really grew on me. So I was like, hell yeah. Awesome. After the Black Monk Time, I decided to keep going here, and I gave Here Are the Sonics a listen, which I also really, really enjoyed. The Witch is such an epic track. Like, fantastic. This is just a really good time. Like, this is more of what I like. I was like, okay, so I'd have to look this up actually. I'll do that real quick while I'm talking. But the sound, I was like, man, this sounds a little bit like Chuck Berry, just a bit. You know what I mean? Like the guitar sound, like I'm like, okay, but this is faster. The tempo's there. The drums in this LP are punk. It is aluminum can production, DIY sound, not good production, not good. In fact, all three of these albums, the production is not the best quality, but that is part of the DIY vibe, right? But I was pleased to see that Chuck Berry's actually cited as a writer on this album at some point. I don't know if it's just one or two tracks or the whole thing, but I could definitely hear that influence. And I was like, high five myself. I caught on to that. I'm like, come on now. I know some Chuck Berry at least. I know some Chuck Berry. But no, this LP was a lot of fun as well. And so I was impressed. 6.2. Really nice. And like, again, the 60s are not a timeline that I typically enjoy. And if you are someone who does enjoy the 60s very, very much, I get where you're coming from. It just never really appealed to me. Not going to act like there's not some great writing or, like in this case, some instrumental stuff that has really set the bar or pushed art in a certain format, which has allowed other genres to explode from that. And I think that's really, really cool. But at the end of the day, yeah, this is not typically a sound I'm going to listen to. Regardless, I had a fun time here. It was cool to see where some of the music that I really love now came from, or at least was influenced by. And I'm not fully done here with the 60s. I have a couple more albums that I will be checking out. See if you can guess which albums I'll be checking out from the 60s that have influenced punk. I have two more albums that I'll be checking out. Guys, I'm Pyro Slays Music. I hope you enjoyed this little video about what I've been listening to in my free time. And I didn't really want to give full reviews to each of these albums because they've been out for a long time. So I figured I'd rather just talk to you about my experience with these albums. And definitely a fun little roller coaster. Till next time, y'all. Peace.